Welcome to an evening of international debate on the campus of the University of North Texas. My name is Brian Lane. How are you doing tonight? I'm the director of debate here at Texas's highest ranked debate team. We have an excellent program planned for you this evening. Before we begin, please take a moment and silence your cell phones. And if any of you are looking for extra credit, you should have had to sign up on the entrance on the way in. There are UNT students from all over campus here. They're interested and involved in debate and discussion on campus. Let me kick things off with a welcome from our UNT Student Body Vice President, Ms. Hillary Shaw.
Hello, students, faculties, and guests. I'm Hillary Shaw, and I'm the Student Body Vice President of UNT. The fact that we have such programs as these is a testament to UNT's commitment to the free exchanging of ideas on intellectual topics and the encouragement of student voices in all forms, especially our amazing and award-winning debate team and the Department of Communication Studies. At UNT, we believe that no matter what, your voice belongs here and to keep speaking up. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Shaw. We have a wonderful and very active debate team on campus. To bring us greetings from the UNT debate team is our president of UNT Debate Speech, Ms. Joy Sandoval.
Hi, my name is Joy Sandoval. I am a sophomore here at the University of North Texas, and I am your current debate president. I would like to thank everyone who came out tonight, even if it was just for extra credit, or those of you who are just genuinely interested in engaging in this dialogue that is about to happen. It's great that you guys could make it out. Not only would I like to thank you guys individually for coming, but I would also like to thank the Department of Communication Studies, the Student Government Association, and the College of Liberal Arts for simply providing us these opportunities like this one to have the British debaters here. Again, thank you all for coming out, and if you guys are interested in debate, you should stop by the general academic building Thursday.
Thank you, Ms. Sandoval. We are also very fortunate to be blessed by a very involved and active group of alumni here at the University of North Texas. Greetings today from the Honorable Virgil Vollenkamp, who's a member of our Debate Alumni Task Force. He just finished serving as the judge in Denton's criminal court. I should also tell you that Mr. Vollenkamp is class of 1980. He looked a little bit different during that time. He's the attractive man sitting down in front. That's right. And during his time here in debate, Virgil was ranked the top debater or the top team in 1980, along with his wife Francine, who's here with us also. Could you please join me in welcoming to give some greetings from our alumni?
Can you hear me all right? Is this mic working? Not sure. All right, I didn't think it would. Shout. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. All right. I'll raise my voice and try to speak a little bit louder. My name is Virgil Vollenkamp, and I did attend North Texas from the fall of 1976 to the spring of 1980, where I participated in debate. And yeah, I had a lot more hair back then than I do now. You guys have a lot to look forward to. Debate for me was a great opportunity to travel. I came from a blue-collar family and engage other individuals in an activity in which I got to match my mind against theirs. And I never had that opportunity but for North Texas providing that to me through the participation in academic debate. It was invaluable to me in learning how to research, particularly scholarly articles. It was invaluable to me in learning how to develop cogent, logical arguments, and it helped me to be able to learn both sides of the issue. You need to be able to understand the other person's point of view and their perspective in order to be able to make a good argument on your own. Now, North Texas has a rich history of debate starting back in 1901. And as early as, was it 1950, I believe that was the first time that we had international debates, and that has continued through the years up until today. Unfortunately, in the 4 years I was here, we did not have that opportunity. I want to talk about one. In 1962, the National Broadcasting Corporation, that is NBC, you're still familiar with that, right? I know there's a lot more media, but back then there was just NBC, ABC, and CBS. And if you were in a rural area, you had access, besides the radio, to about 2 TV channels, CBS and NBC. The National Broadcasting Corporation had a debate competition nationwide, and they invited certain teams from various universities. The University of North Texas won the national championship that was sponsored by NBC and televised, defeating the University of Southern California in the final debate. It was such a success that they decided to invite a team from Oxford University to come to America to debate the team from the University of North Texas. The 2 individuals who debated was a fellow named John Swaney and Ann Hodges. And they did that at on prime time, 7 to 8:30 p.m. nationwide on national television on July the 3rd, 1962. It's interesting, they were debating the British on the night before the celebration of our independence from said empire. And the unanimous decision of the individuals who judged the debate was that the University of North Texas won. And so that's a great and rich part of our history that needs to be told and needs to be remembered. Now, as I understand it, we've got, let's see, our British team here and our team from North Texas, and we'll be debating fast food. Is that correct? So I did a little research in advance regarding food, particularly as it relates to Britain, and a little bit about food as it relates to the U.S., just a couple of quotes. I did locate one from a fellow by the name of Bill Marsano, who is a travel writer. I think they refer to him as an Epicurean traveler. And he had this to say about British food. He said, "The British Empire was created as a byproduct of desperate Englishmen roaming the earth in search of a decent meal." So that explains a lot. On the other hand, our fellows here from North Texas will be defending such great food icons as Ray Kroc, who I know most of you are familiar with, right? McDonald's. And Colonel Harlan Sanders, the fellow who fried a lot of chicken, as well as the inventor of the Twinkie, that icon of American junk food. I don't know how else to describe it. A fellow by the name of James Dewar, whose name seems better fitted to be distilling scotch. The American food, on the other hand, the best description that I could find was from Henry James, the author. Does anyone know who Henry James is or was? He was an author, a writer. British and American. I think he had dual citizenship. Originally, he was born in America, died in England. And he died over 100 years ago. But he made this statement during the course of his life. "Americans will eat garbage, provided you sprinkle it liberally with ketchup." And I think that still probably holds true today. Ketchup was invented in 1876, and long before he was dead 100 years ago, that seemed to be put on about everything. So it still is, I suppose, today. In any event, I'm looking forward to a great debate. Welcome to Texas, the best state in these United States, and I'm glad you can make it. Is this the only school in Texas you'll be debating, or will you be going else?
This is our third.
Your third? Where else have you been?
We were first at UNT in El Paso, and then in West Texas A&M.
Okay. So, welcome to the Dallas-Fort Worth area metroplex.
The best university.
And the best University of Texas. You already knew that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Virgil. Well, we're very happy to host this debate. Who's ready to get a debate on? As you heard already, we are are raising the topic of junk food, something we know a little bit about here in Texas. Am I right? Yeah. Let me introduce our tyrants. I mean, the British team is coming.
I prefer concrete.
Very good. Everybody, real quick, open your mouth and say, ah! Ah! That's right, we have a physician among us. Please welcome Neve Thompson, a graduate of medicine from the University of Glasgow. She's a doctor working on emergency medicine in Scotland. She's Irish, so she's right at home here with the mean green. She's very happy to be in our presence. She was a champion debater. She was the open semifinalist at the European University Debating Championship and a grand finalist at the Oxford IB, where she was the best ranked female speaker. Is that correct? Yes, and she was the first team representing her school to ever break that at that particular international tournament. She's also been a grand finalist, a winner, or a best speaker at over a dozen British universities, including Durham, Newcastle, Glasgow, Trinity, the University College of Dublin, Copenhagen, Leeds, and others. She's been the chief adjudicator, that means the best judge, at major tournaments including Oxford, Edinburgh, Durham, Glasgow, the Inter-Temple Bar Association, and others, and has chaired grand finals across the United Kingdom and Europe. Please join me in welcoming Neve.
It's back time.
She was ready to take the stage, though. Watch out.
Oh, gunning for it.
Her colleague in arms will be Dan Scanio. We learned two things about Dan so far.
Firstly, that they asked me to give a passport-sized photo.
It's my favorite thing in
He'll
every
go in a
stop.
passport. We learned two
I was
things.
very unhappy.
We learned two things. First, Dan absolutely loves coffee. Everyone, please chip in for Starbucks cards for Dan. No, he hates coffee. He hates coffee. And the second, Dan is a real stickler for convention. He's a big proponent of making sure every single second counts in the format for things. Dan is not only a champion debater, but a champion moot court participant. Where are my moot court people? Are they here? No, they're not here. They're practicing law somewhere, of course. He was the champion of the insurance law moot in 2016, where the final was held in front of Sir Richard Akins, a retired court judge of appeals. He also won the Monroe Cup debating competition in 2019, which invites students from all of the Inns of Court to compete. He's been called to the Bar of England and the Bar of Wales, gaining invaluable experience in public speaking, and he also worked as an advocate for a law firm where he represented clients at court on different civil matters, further improving his advocacy skills. In other words, if you get in trouble tonight out on Fry Street, call Dan. Call Dan. They are facing off against the University of North Texas team. Let's give it up for our home team. First up is Alex Dixon. Alex likes long walks on the beach and sunsets, long drives in a van from Missouri. No, I'm just kidding. None of those things. Alex is a senior from the University of North Texas, majoring in communication studies. He's the current vice president of the speech and debate team. Also a graduate of Tyler Junior College with an associate's degree in speech. She's won multiple national, regional, and regional and national titles in debate. She's the current back-to-back State of Texas champion in the International Public Debate Association 2 years in a row. How about that? Here you see a picture of Alex taken 2 days ago where she was a finalist in impromptu speaking at the University of Central Missouri tournament, one of the nation's most competitive speech tournaments. Yes, that's right. Doing work on the weekend. That's right. She is joined by her partner Josiah Atkinson. Give it up. Josiah is a graduate from West Hardin High School. He's currently majoring in international studies. During his debate career, he's won multiple state championships. He is the back-to-back debate winner in Lincoln Douglas in the state of Texas. Competing for UNT, he was part of the national showcase last year. That means he was one of the top 7 speakers in the entire nation in speech. And just coming off of last week, he placed in the top 8 quarterfinalists at the University of Central Missouri tournament. Give it up for Josiah. We are going to talk about junk food and all its deep fried goodness. How about that? Our topic for this evening is this house would make junk food illegal. We have 4 7-minute speeches. Good to go. Look at that. Yes. All right. Thank you, sir. We'll have 4 7-minute speeches in which the debaters will talk back and forth amongst themselves. Then we'll have a time for you to get involved where we have our audience questions. We'll have those moderated so you can ask a question of the debaters. And then finally, we'll have summation speeches by each side. If you're following along with us online as we're live streaming right now, or in the audience, you can always tweet questions using the hashtag UNTBritDebate. All right, without any further ado, let me welcome the Prime Minister of this debate, Neve Thompson. Hey, hey!
It is an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much to everyone for coming. There are more people than there are seats, which is a good way to start. And thank you so much to Brian and everyone who's put together all the effort to host us. We've had an absolutely fantastic day. This is an amazing campus, and I'm delighted to get into it. There are easier things and easier cases to run than taking your junk food away, but quite genuinely, I couldn't be happier because I've already gained more weight than I'm willing to admit in the 7 days since I came to the States, and I blame each and every one of you. So I'm very, very happy to get to run this case. I'm going to explain to you today why there is a public health crisis, not just in this country, but in mine as well. It's worse here, but it's also bad in mine. I'm going to explain to you why there's a direct link between the rubbish food we all enjoy so much and the horrendous health consequences that come from that. I'm going to tell you why it's not an informed choice, why none of you understand just how bad this is. None of you understand the choice you're making every time you put those delicious, delicious fried goods into your face, and none of you can possibly know the terrible consequences that await you. And I'm then going to explain why it's principally and reasonably justified that we do it. My comrade over here is then going to go for full state communism at some point in the latter part of his speech. You'll see it, it's fine. So first and foremost, 1 in 3 people in this state alone is morbidly obese, They are so large that their health parameters have changed physiologically and fundamentally to the point where they are at risk of a number of diseases. Just over 1 in 5 of you will die of a heart attack. Of you, specifically, I'm pointing at all of you, right? That is a terrifying statistic, absolutely terrifying, particularly because it's completely, directly related to the food that you eat. It's not accidental, it's completely causal, okay? In the same way that asbestos causes mesothelioma, and so we stopped allowing you to build houses with mesothelioma-making ingredients in them, I'm going to say that if you don't understand enough about the ingredients in your food to make a reasonable informed choice, and I'm going to say that you can't know enough about the ingredients in your food to make a reasonable informed choice, then the government should do that for you, okay? So what I'd say is, I'm going to steal some sweets.
Okay, so
What we propose is a mechanism by which, based on the nutritional value of the food, we either price it or ban it. So these, illegal. These, really expensive. I'm talking like $10, $15 a packet, something like that. And the money I'm going to raise from these, I'm going to use to fund all of your healthcare when you need it, okay? You'll hate me now, but in your 50s, you'll thank me. So, why is this a problem? Why do we need to do this now? Because this is a growth industry. You're all going to get older. You're all going to keep getting older, and you're all going to keep getting sicker as a consequence of this. We all are, okay? So not only is the problem as bad as it is now, the problem is only the tip of the iceberg now. Everyone is living that bit longer, but being that bit sicker when they live. So if we don't act now, not only will we guarantee this will continue to be a problem, we will fail to stem it at the point at which we can reverse it, and we will allow ourselves to sleepwalk into a worse crisis than we are already in, all right? So, why is this not an informed choice? First and foremost, how many of you, when you read the ingredients on the back of this packet, actually know what it says? I have a degree in this, and I'd say I know 50%, right? How many of you know, for each ingredient, what the relative risk increase is of you getting a particular disease based on your health profile? Yeah, no, I know, me neither, right? That's an impossible task. There's a PhD in each ingredient. There's a PhD in the consequences of each ingredient. So how can you possibly know when you order fries with queso Not just what that could theoretically do to you, but could theoretically do to any one of you based on your health parameters. You can't know. You can't know. That's crazy town. I don't know how to fix my car. I don't tell my mechanic how to fix my car. How can you be reasonably expected to tell them what to put in your food when you buy it? It's a reasonable test that you would hope that the people who make your food look out to protect you when they make it. They don't. I'm here to tell you, not only do they not protect you, they actively seek to influence every single choice you make about your food to make them worse choices. So first and foremost, you can't know what goes in it, you can't know how it works, and you can't know how it's going to affect you. Secondly, let's realize, when we talk about informed free choice, we assume it is unfettered by external influences. The problem with that is that advertising exists. Alright, so when you walk down the street, the big flashy lights work by knowing that someone somewhere in an office, probably in New York, probably wearing a suit, and probably day drinking, and probably sexist, realize that if they made a flashy sign, your neuroocular reflexes would make your eyes turn to that sign, whether or not you wanted them to. And that means that you then look at the advert, which then tells you the name of the product they want you to be thinking about. And when they see that juicy, delicious picture, your gustatory reflexes, your entire neurological system starts to think about food, not just on a conscious level. You start to prepare yourself for the eating of food. So then when you don't eat the food, you start to feel hungry, when you wouldn't have felt hungry anyways. These people are not stupid. We are. They're not. So you've now walked down the street, been distracted by a bright, flashy sign, and started to think about food, and you think, okay, right, well, you know, I'm a conscious adult, I'll go to the slightly healthier option. I'll go down the street, and I'll go and I'll get, maybe I'll start with a salad. And then they're like, okay, would you like ranch dressing? The answer, by the way, is no, invariably. Would you like ranch dressing? Well, I suppose if you suggested the ranch dressing, because now you're going to consider whether or not your lunch would be as good without the ranch dressing. And the answer is, won't taste as good. So you think, okay, well, I'll get the salad, but I'll get it with ranch dressing. And they go, would you like fries with that? Well, I suppose fries are delicious. I really like fries. Then you order the fries with it. And the series of cognitive choices you are making become less and less informed and more influenced by the salesmanship and sales tactics they've been taught to use. I'll take a question.
Okay, so it seems that you're raising the price of these exponentially. How do you ensure that individuals will buy the products to fund the Medicare efforts?
Some people will want these things badly enough, but also your cost overall to your health system will go down dramatically at the point at which they don't suffer this much disease. So I don't need as many people to buy as much as they currently do, and even if I did, there's going to be less disease I need to treat. So now you've bought more than you ever wanted to buy, and you feel sicker. But here's the problem. You might feel a bit gross at the time, but you don't feel that bad. So you do it. You do it again and again and again every day. You make this uninformed choice again and again and again every day. The problem with that is that at this stage you don't actually know much of the consequences. But let me tell you, I've seen people when they are told that they're going to lose their second foot to diabetes. I have told people that they've had a stroke and that they may never talk again. I have seen people be unable to get up and walk and hold their child because the arthritis has ruined both of their knees. And that is people in their 50s and 60s. I'm out of time, but this isn't fair. It doesn't affect us all equally, and we have an obligation to do something about it. So please vote for the affirmative.
You can keep those.
Don't eat.
So first, I want to thank y'all for coming here and y'all for traveling so far. I think that you gave some great arguments, but we're going to ultimately end up negating today's resolution, that being that fish health should be banning junk food. Ultimately, first, because we shouldn't ban anything. Now, she says that this is a twofold plan. First, we're going to ban certain foods, or certain foods that have a higher non-nutritional value. But second, that we're going to put a sin tax or a higher tax on other foods, making it to where like a little package of M&Ms is $10. I don't know about you, but I don't want to pay $10 for a little package of M&Ms. Additionally, this means that whenever we're looking at things such as syntax and bans, we have to understand the effects. There's ultimately going to be three independent things for you to vote negative in today's debate. First is going to be that if we go forward with the ban, we end up banning the ability to have individual autonomy. The American Psychological Association, one of their physicians, PhD at University of Denmark, Barbara McCombs, highlights that one of the first choices you have as a child is whether you can eat food that you like or say that you do not like it. Which means at the point at which we take that choice away from a child, whether they get to say that they do like this piece of candy or they would rather have a piece of fruit, they no longer get that ability to choose and that autonomy in the future. This spills over to things such as choice for how you decide whether or not you're going to drive a car at 16, whether you are going to go to class or not, even bigger things like who you're going to vote for or if you're just going to abstain and not vote.
On this, given that 1 in 3 children are now obese, do you think they can make a reasonable informed choice about whether or not they want a candy or an apple and the impact that will have on their life? And do they not still get the benefit of choice choosing between an apple and an orange?
So I think this is an amazing question, and I'm glad that you brought it up. Specifically, one, the argument that Barbara McCombs was trying to make is that the choice should be there so that people are allowed to make the decision whether it is right or wrong for them to learn from it in the future. I think that the kid, depending on what age they are, that's why they have parents to tell them, no, you're not going to have candy every night for dinner. But additionally, whenever we look at like that autonomical choice, we have to also understand that it creates a type of new oppression in the future. In the world of the ban has gone through, pretend it is there, imagine it. It happens. Now there is more bullying to people who are at a predisposition for obesity. Because obesity doesn't just come from junk food or higher concentrates of fat in your foods. It comes from things like historical or heritage from your family. Those are things you can't control, which means that those same people that are bullied now will continue to be bullied, but it will be their fault that they can't change it. One of the second reasons why you were going to end up voting negative in today's debate is because the affirmative wants you to believe that the government should get to dictate what you consume and what you don't. Just as Neve has a Diet Coke over there, you should get to choose if you get to have that Diet Coke, or you only get to have water. Because Diet Coke in the world of the ban would be gone. It wouldn't be more expensive. Because Diet Coke has things like aspartame in it, which have been led to link to things like cancer. If we really are concerned with this public good, we should also understand that if there is a public good to be had, then the government gets all control over everything we do, and I don't think any of us want that. I mean, I won't get to vape anymore, and that would kind of suck. But ultimately, we don't think that syntax is the worst thing. Actually, Josiah and I agree that that could be something very good, even if it was thrown back into the healthcare region. The problem with that is because they have a ban and a syntax, people will just not buy stuff, which means it won't go back into healthcare. You won't see anything go back into an educational system of any type, which means people aren't educated about the health risk, and they continue doing bad things like eating things like bacon. We will now have black market bacon, because bacon isn't junk food. It's not banned in the world of the affirmative. So we'll put bacon on everything. And while that sounds great, it doesn't reduce the obesity, which means the affirmative doesn't actually fix any of the own issues. As highlighted by a CBS article on September 4th of this year, they highlight that things like unhealthy habits are best broken when talking about food as gradually weaning yourself off and starting a new type of diet. Actually, you can ask Brian Lane, because when we've had conversations, he's talked about how you have to have a mindset to want that change for yourself. Us just taking away the food from you, I'm sorry, are you going to find a new vice? Because that's what alcoholics do. That's what people do that need something to cope with. So taking away that food's not going to do anything. But third and finally, you can vote for the negative team comfortably because 1, you get to keep your food. 2, we don't tell you what to do. And we don't create a type of black market economy. I'll get to you in a minute. So whenever we're looking at the ban creating a black market, understand that the black market is worse than what we have now. It increases obesity rates. But additionally, as the Conversation publication of January 2014 explains, that it escalates foods. Foods that we currently look at in the status quo as having high fat, having high sugar, or high sodium. People
now start to make them with higher fats, higher sugars, higher sodium, and they're cheaper than their taxed goods. So not only can you buy this $10 bag of M&Ms from the government, but you can buy this $10 bag of M&Ms from me, and it has twice as much sugar. You're welcome, and it's only going to cost you $2. That's the problem. Because I'll get to you in one more second. So what it ultimately does is it creates a type of forbidden fruit, which means that people want it because it is banned. Now I'm getting into protective time. I thought you were president, so go ahead.
Are you protected?
No, you're good.
Cool. So, haven't you got responsibility? Hasn't the public and the government got responsibility to protect us? We're probably considering, as you said, 1 in 5 people here will die of a heart attack.
So, first and foremost, this is a democracy, and if the people want to keep the food, they should get to keep the food. But additionally, it's not the right of the government to dictate what you get to consume and don't consume, especially if certain things do help you. Specifically, people that have eating disorders, autism or autism spectrum disorder, or even diabetes use things like sugar to regulate things such as their feeling, emotion, and for people with diabetes and hypoglycemia, it helps them regulate their blood sugar. Without that, they have to get on very expensive medicines that you don't fix, because what we end up with is a healthcare system that nobody in America cares to fund because they're not going to be buying these types of goods, they're too expensive, and then they buy from the black market. Don't fix anything. Vote negative. Keep your food.
Seems like we've scared off some people already. So, without sounding like a broken record, I'd like to thank everyone as well for coming here. Thank you to the university as well for hosting it. It's a fantastic experience for us to be able to go around America and debate and teach and coach. We're very privileged to do so. But I also want to say a huge apology to my partner, Neve. I can be very sassy when I haven't eaten. So a huge apology for that. But something that's been great about touring has meant that I've been able to talk with a doctor. She's told me a lot about the scientific consequences of fast food. Now, she's already mentioned those before, but I'm going to move into 3 reasons, or 3 further reasons, why I think that we should ban junk food at the definition that Neve proposed. So the first one is the protection versus the freedom argument. The responsibility of the government, as I already mentioned, to be able to qualify our rights in ways that protects us. And I'll go into further detail what that means. Secondly, I'd like to come up with environmental reasons why we should ban junk food in light of the massive amounts of meat that is produced from junk food. And third, I'd like to point out the link between the lack of education and the link between junk food as well and how they intertwine. But first, I'll move into rebuttal. Now, my colleague on the other side of the table focused on how she said, don't ban anything. We don't ban anything because we are a democracy. We do ban things because we're a democracy, because we decide on banning things. That's what we do. We decide what to ban as a democracy, as you guys. That's the point in a democracy. Furthermore, she said, also again in quotation, said public good. Well, I say it's a public good because of the reasons that Neve has already pointed out. Problems and the significant health risks in eating junk food is so much so that we need to qualify it. We need to have a ban on some parts and a qualification on others. A statistic that really shocked me was that 34% of people in Texas are obese. Now that's 34%, that's a significant amount of people that are suffering because of junk food, because of their inability to sort of move away from that. And further reasons which Neve pointed out as well, of how it's standardized and advertised, which entices us in further. Now, furthermore, my colleague on the other side, Alex, also pointed out that there's a predisposition, so the last minute of her speech. Now, we say that more people that are at risk because we're entitled to, or we feel more entitled to, lead towards junk food. Now, this includes people with lack of education, which I'll move into my third point, but those who are suffering as well, those with poverty, and again, I'll focus on that on my last point, and also those with certain races. Certain people will naturally be more likely to be more overweight than others, including within certain poverty groups and certain races. So we need to be able to ensure that those are properly protected by having the ban and having the qualification. Furthermore, again, Alex pointed out that certain people such as hypoglycemic or people with autism may suffer because they rely on sugary foods. Doesn't that show the problem? Why can't they have fruit? Why aren't they being able to educate it properly? Because they can, and it's possible. They lead towards that because it's easy. They lead towards that because those who are sort of helping them are more likely to give them fast food. I know someone who worked in the healthcare sector, particularly one who was a carer, and he said he was so frustrated by the fact that everyone would just give these autistic children fast food. He was so frustrated by that. He thought, why can't there be healthier options? So for that reason, and I've dealt with a rebuttal, we think we should ban junk food. Now let me go into my more substantive points, which I may have to rush due to time. But firstly, the protection of freedom. As I've already pointed out, we're not doing this for any communist reasons or unnecessary reasons. We're doing this because we want to protect those, as my colleague pointed out. There are certain risks, and we need to do so. Now, cybersecurity. When someone attacks your computer, do you go there, well, they have the individual autonomy. It's up to them. They're more than entitled to attack your computer. Obviously, we don't. Obviously, we consider the fact that, no, you need that protection. And that's what we would do by banning junk food and having that qualification. We would allow to ensure that when there are problems or when problems ensue, the government, our responsibility in a democratic state is to ensure that people are properly protected. So it's the protection versus freedom argument, and the fact that we do so already, and we should do so for the reasons my colleague pointed out. Secondly, I'd like to point out the environmental reasons. So lots of fast food involves massive amounts of meat, particularly from cattle. Now, cattle produce large amounts of methane, and as a result, they are it means that there's more of a CO2 layer, ensuring that global warming happens. Now, again, I was really, really surprised by this, but it is true. So if we reduce this, if we reduce the amount of cattle that is produced, and we reduce the amount of food, or junk food specifically, that we produce, it allows for a reduction and a better climate justice, a better climate. This is something really important.
Question.
Oh, go ahead.
So how does the affirmative
At any time?
where consumption of cattle and other things like that contributing to the global warming completely stops or decreases below the 2 degree?
So if I understood your question correctly, asking about how can the reduction of junk food increase for the decrease the environmental problem. Well, we're not saying don't eat meat. What we are saying is just we'll have less because of the junk food that's around with from cattle and things like that. So the main thing is the focus on junk food being linked with environmental problems and linked with the cattle and the problems that ensue from there. I'm going to quickly make my last point, which is the link between junk food and lack of education. Most people who are uneducated or those in poverty areas are more likely to have junk food. It's easier, it's more accessible. For further reasons, as Neve said, they're more inclined to do so. That includes people that they can't afford the better foods, so they end up leaning towards this, which is accessible. That's the danger as well. We say we have a responsibility as government to ensure that people are properly protected. So, for the reasons of a democratic state having qualifications, the reasons for climate change and or climate justice, and also the link between junk food and the lack of education, we urge you, based on medical reasons as well, to ensure that you vote to ban junk food. Thank you very much.
further problems with junk food.
I'm good.
See, water solves.
What's up, UNT? It's me, your boy. The affirmative team is here to tell you essentially that banning junk food is going to work out to not only increase our health, but also to decrease the negative effects that we see from it. Their advocacy is fundamentally flawed for multiple reasons. We're going to get to 5 real quick. First, their advocacy is far too high. We show you that by voting for the negative, we would implement a sin tax, much like we see on alcohol and tobacco. Marginal tax increases that go to funding education efforts against things like alcohol poisoning, alcoholism, or even the lung disease that we see from either vaping or from using tobacco products. Their advocacy being so high means that we don't buy those products. No education efforts or medical efforts are going to go back into it, meaning we see the same issues arise. But then, second, they have no actual explanation of the bright line of their advocacy. They never tell you directly what is going to be banned and what we're going to tax. They just say it has no nutritional value without actually implementing or describing what that means. This is how in the last speech they're able to basically say, yeah, we'd also start banning meat products as well. Don't let them do this. Until they can get up here and specifically show you what that bright line is, that advocacy makes no sense. But then, moving on, the ban is going to encompass areas that we see as not being beneficial. Specifically, we show you right now that for people with autism or other areas that Alex describes essentially as being an issue of textures or a picky eater along without a diagnosis, it gets rid of those for those areas and individuals that are affected by this illness. Then, furthermore, bans no work. So when we look at it specifically, think about what we banned previously in the United States. Prohibition in the 1930s, and when we tried banning specific war on drugs. Neither of these have worked out in our favor. Prohibition drove up the use of alcohol and created a black market for it. The war on drugs is only meant to push out those that are impoverished, that are of color, and other instances to create this war itself.
Point of information?
What's up, man?
Are you saying that junk food will then lead to the black market and will go underground? So you'll be eating fries in sort of dodgy places?
Yeah, so that's like kind of the argument like Alex makes in the beginning. There's going to be people trying to grab these foods, and when we make it illegal, that means individuals that go after these foods are going to be punished by law, which we don't think you should essentially go to jail or pay a fine for just trying to enjoy some fries. But then, specifically, the actual opposite works. When we don't ban things, we see actual benefits, such as Portugal. Portugal recently, in the past 2 years, legalized all recreational drugs. Doesn't sound like a great idea, but what we saw in Portugal specifically, those drug uses went down, while also efforts to combat them went up, because they were able to classify these substances and control them. Black market goes under, junk food is no longer being passed by the FDA, meaning we have worse alternatives for those that are going to look after them, because I'm not going to stop eating my first. But then, specifically, they like to make the argumentation that right now, that we're going to have those that are impoverished be saved. That's not what happens. If you vote this advocacy on the affirmative, 2 things happens. 1, it means that individuals that have to buy these kind of foods are going to pay more for those foods, entrapping them in a system of poverty. But then, second, it's going to create food deserts. For areas like this, such as East Atlanta or the 3rd Ward of Houston, an area that I am close to, they cannot afford these high products of food. You take this away from them, it creates a food desert where this produce is already non-existent, meaning these individuals have to go to other areas, increase their costs to find sources of food. Now, we're going to say that autonomy is going to be an independent reason of why you're going to vote for the affirmative team. When we're going to protect your right to choose, they mishandle this argument completely. They basically say that the government is there for protection against that of cybersecurity. Here's the bright line that we've tried to establish. Cybersecurity is cracked down on because it goes against our fundamental rights of privacy. There is nothing about eating junk food that conflicts with another individual's right. That's why we ban things or declare them illegal in the United States. This is not what happens when you're eating junk food, and I think that's pretty easy to see. Don't allow for the cybersecurity example to sway you to vote for the affirmative. Makes no sense. But then, moving on. The syntax. Syntax is a really good idea, but we show you the negative, it's a better way of implementation. Theirs far too high. They even show you that for an M&M packet, it's going to be $10 or $15. We show you comparable market rates in the United States that we already do for alcohol and tobacco is going to be a great thing to do. Because if you vote for the neg, not only will we have a slight reduction in health risks because of junk food, we'll also see more money go back into education efforts and medical efforts to combat those diseases. They mischaracterize obesity and heart attacks as being necessarily that of junk food. Both of these are pre-congenital diseases that risk is also increased by your genetics. Banning junk food does not get rid of these issues. For example, my family has heart trouble, and we go through this. As an individual, I make that choice. I have the autonomy to not engage in that food as often for my health benefits. And we say the same, let the market control the syntax. But then, furthermore, we're going to go on to the main points he brings up in the last speech. We've talked about the protection. We show you right now these protections are not going to work because it's not a violation of rights. It's in essence going to be teared down by a draconian law that the affirmative would implement. Also, along their advocacy, they never tell you what's going to happen if an individual is caught eating illegal junk food. It's another reason not to vote for the advocacy. If they can't tell you what the judicial problems are going to be for individuals that go around this advocacy, don't vote for them. It's far too vague. But then, we go into the meats example. The app doesn't get to do this. They show you it's low nutritional value. That's their bright line. Meat is not low nutritional value. It still exists in the affirmative world. Don't let them skew that. But second, areas like Texas or areas in the Great Plains are going to suffer because of this advocacy. They're going to have decreased cattle production. They're not able to survive off other methods. This is how those areas make their dollars. It would create an economic crisis across the Midwest of the United States. But also, even if you get rid of the meat industry and you buy the affirmative's argument, the dairy industry still exists of why cattle crop continues to move forward and why methane keeps leaking. The affirmative can't claim that they can solve this issue. Don't vote for them off of this. But then finally, they show you that junk food leads to a lack of actually takes advantage of those that are in lower poverty areas. We show you specifically 2 ways that it gets worse if you vote for the affirmative. It makes them buy higher goods, and it creates food deserts. For all these reasons, we're going to not vote for the negative. The final piece I'd like to leave you with is essentially that when we're looking at today's debate, you have 2 advocacies that are wanting to decrease our junk food. We have the only one that can actually increase education and medical efforts to combat the crisis we're seeing in America. Thank you.
For all of our 4 debaters. Wow!
Who'd have thought in the heart of Texas, deep-fried capital of the world, we got a debate about junk food? Hey, it's your time to get involved. I'm looking for audience questions and answers. You can direct them to the government team.
Or questions to the opposition
team. I've got a first question that came in from one of our Twitter followers, actually. That question being, are you proposing that we actually outlaw the consumers of junk food? Would they become criminals?
No. So what we're proposing is that the people who produce the food are held to different legal standards, and that those who sell the food are held to different legal standards. I don't care if I catch someone eating junk food. I care if I can find out where they bought it from.
Okay, all right. What about, do we have another question out here? Yes. Yes, I've got a microphone for you.
Members of the I would love to hear a definition from you. What is junk food?
So the difficulty with this was that the reason our mechanism is deliberately vague is because the mechanism would take about 4 years to come to fruition, I suspect, and would require a panel of experts with PhDs longer than your arms about each specific constituent element and what you would be looking to ban. Broadly speaking, I would say the carbohydrate and fat content will be the main parameters that we use to define what we're talking about. We're asking you to say, in principle, would you agree with the idea of us banning certain foods that we know to be profoundly unhealthy and taxing heavily other foods that we know are quite unhealthy and could be eaten maybe in a small enough amount in a safe way? I'm being deliberately vague because it's a really long, boring debate if I'm talking about micronutrients. I promise you it really is. And I'm trying instead to make it reasonably engaging and draw it out to the broader principles. But in essence, evidence-based, slow process, expert panels.
All right, I think we've got a question over here.
America is ranked 37th in the entire world for the healthcare. And I was wondering how your healthcare plan would even work with our broken healthcare system.
That's an amazing question. Essentially, it would work a whole lot better because it actually increases the importance of preventative lifestyle measures in your system. The fact that you have unequal access to diabetes medications, preventative medications, to information from your healthcare providers about what the best choices are, all mean that the fact that your food market is even worse than anyone else's in the world is more likely to lead to the health problems we're so concerned about. So actually the health problems, or rather the problems accessing healthcare in this country, make it more important that you improve the ease of making good lifestyle choices.
Just to add to that as well, it's not to put the cart before the horse. You don't want to say that there are problems that ensue from junk food, therefore we need a healthcare system and we can't have that because of the tax from that. It's stop junk food, you'll see a reduction of health problems. Just to quickly also add to the previous point as well on what classifies as junk food, I think it's relatively obvious that some junk foods, when they're deep fat fried, mixed with chocolate, sprinkled with other sources, just aren't. Well, that's sort of, and that's what Neve was discussing, whether that's the interim, but I'm talking about there's some food which are just so clearly junk that we shouldn't eat.
All right, let's keep it going.
So my question's for the government. With your proposal to ban junk food, what's your plan for the obvious economic repercussions? And what I mean by that is a company like McDonald's employs 300,000 people in the United States, and at the very best, they would be drastically contracting. So what is your plan for all those people who are now going to be out of work?
That's a great question, by the way, and thank you for asking that. And that's the problem with economics and health, and that's where we deal with that. What we say is, when moving and banning junk food, that means there will be more options for greener assets or greener and more healthier outlets. As you can see, McDonald's owns Itsu and Pret. I didn't know that until quite recently. The reason why is because people started to lean towards healthier options. When you've got that option there, that all those employees could move over at the same time. I think your question is whether those people who own McDonald's is more important than the significant health risks. And I think that's what we need to balance. We need to balance whether those people dying is more important than the people who specifically get that job at that time who could get another job, especially now with a massive gap in the market for greener healthier options.
All right, do we have any other question for the opposition team? Anybody else? No, we just love those accents so much. One back here? Yes? Yes? No? Well, I'll take your question anyway.
What's good? So my question is, in America, even though we can't do whatever we want, or it's limited, we also have restrictions on things that are addictive. Like with alcohol, you can't get it past a certain age, you can't get it past a certain time. With prescribed medication, you can only get it with the doctor's note and things like that. And even with gambling, only 48 states have regulations on things like that. So I'm saying, even if y'all don't want to completely ban the regulations, because it is showing that it is dangerous for kids. Like she said, 1 in 3 kids are obese, and I think heart disease, one of the highest in the world, is in America.
So my question is, what's the regulation law? Yes, that's our second point that we make specifically. We argue that a sin tax like we have on tobacco, on alcohol, is necessary to curb the use of junk food. We also make the argument specifically that when we use the sin tax, because we do this for alcohol and tobacco as well, think of the Truth campaign that you see smoking cigarettes, trying to take away youth cigarette smoking. We use that money from the sin tax to create education efforts and medical efforts to combat this. So we're not let everything happen. We're how we already do, let the market control that junk food stock itself.
Okay. To add to that,
that the argument that we make specifically in this debate is that, so the affirmative wants a ban and a sin tax. If you have a ban and a sin tax, then the sin tax doesn't work. In the world of the negative, we say that the sin tax is a good idea solely by itself, but if you have those types of bans, then you can't have a functional sin tax, because things like the prohibition, which was way before most of our time, end up reoccurring with things like junk food, and then we get cartels for candy.
All right, here we go.
I had a question for government. How would you handle international trade inquiries from other countries who benefit from junk food sales? I'm just curious.
There we go. What are you going to do with those Swedish fish accounts?
So you're saying the relationship between international trade and health, is that your question?
No, I'm just curious about how you would handle any countries that benefit from junk food sales.
Sweden, let's say it. Sweden. Yes.
So the issue is not what the ingredients, where the ingredients come from, or the purchasing of those ingredients. It's what they're used to make here in the United States. So you could still be using predominantly the same supply chains for large amounts of the same ingredients in terms of spices, vegetables, and major constituent elements of all of your foodstuffs to make better food. That's the problem, is that the carbohydrate ratio is increased massively and artificially because it increases satiety, the feeling of being full, and decreases the I'm speaking very quickly, even for me, I will slow down. And decreases the relative amounts you get of healthier things like vegetables. So while you will see a drop in, say, for example, the purchasing of amounts of meat or things that make pasta, you will see an increase in the number of things that can go with those two things. So you'll just see a relative change in the macroeconomic scale that can be adjusted for.
So let me try as well. So I believe your question is about international trade. We would just not allow those products into the country, or at least the production of those products, and that's very simple. In fact, what it could also do is allow for healthier, better, greener products into the country. Again, furthering international trade on a much broader basis, because it's not coming from specific certain areas. We now have a broader base in a wider variety of countries. I hope that answered it.
Does that answer your question? No more Swedish fish, I got it. I've got another Twitter question. It's directed at our government, and I might have to fill in a little bit. It has to do with the State Fair of Texas. Are you familiar?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, well, one of our Twitter followers has pointed out that if there's no junk food, there's no State Fair of Texas anymore. Because that's basically what it's all about. And the question is, are we attempting to reduce cultural foods because they have less nutritional value?
I'm going to jump in again. Absolutely not. As I pointed out already to the first question, it's so clear what is obviously not just junk. When you have it, we were in El Paso, we had a donut burger with 2 pieces of huge meat, and then it was sprinkled with syrup and honey with like chocolate.
And what shop was that from?
Well, no, we certainly won't say, but it's so clear what's obviously classified as junk, and we don't want to be doing it, we don't want to be endorsing that. We recognise there are certain sort of or certain foods which may have higher calories, things like that, but what we're trying to say, we're trying to lead people away from junk food. And why is it other countries haven't got such a significant amount of health problems due to heart attack and people dying and obesity? It's because of the clear junk foods here. We're not trying to stifle cultural foods. What we are trying to do is protect our society, protect them from leading towards junk food for the reasons that we said, on it being easier for it and far too accessible.
Dan, Twitter wants to know, that restaurant in El Paso, did you eat it?
No.
I did.
So the opposition has already established that junk food is really easily accessible for people under the poverty line. How do you plan on making healthier food more accessible for people in those groups?
That was what? Yes, so the question is how it's more easily accessible for people in terms of greener products. Well, the same way that it is easily accessible for junk food now, So if there's more variety, then there's competition. As you know, with competition laws, with general competition, it means that people will lower the prices because they have to compete. It means that there'll be more variety, but also easier, more accessible products as well because of the basis of competition. I appreciate that might not sound as easy when you what's competition, but competition is if there is another girl trying to sell the product I'm trying to sell, I'll make mine different and I'll make mine less expensive.
And the thing that both sides of this debate concede to is that a sin tax raises more revenue to pay for things like healthcare. It can also be used to do things like subsidize vegetables and things that are more healthy. So you can use that to make healthier options cheaper, which would have been a part of my mechanism had I remembered to say it and didn't. So therefore can't enter into the debate. But isn't actually the answer?
All right, over here, Nye's got a question for North Texas.
Hey, what do you say for, how do I word this? Okay, so if we're not going to put a ban or a small sin tax on junk food or food that's unhealthy or something like that, how do we as a country take the obesity level down without taking away certain junk foods or taking away certain things?
Absolutely, that's a great question, and I'm glad this gives me a point to kind of clear that up. Josiah and I are absolutely for a sin tax. A type of sin tax could be used good. However, coupled with a ban, that's when you see food start being taken away out of the market. Sin tax is something that can be directed by the market, and our advocacy as a negative is that the market should get to decide like the prices of said junk food, and you should get the choice to choose whether or not to consume whatever you want to consume. I hope that answered your question, but basically the market and you will decide.
Yeah, and like another thing is, one of the first arguments I make on our advocacy is that their sin tax specifically, the only thing that we disagree on is that they want a large scale increase on the price of these goods. We say that right now comparable increases that we see on alcohol and tobacco are like the answer specifically. Because theirs, we say it's too large, no one's going to buy these products, meaning that money doesn't go back into the education efforts. We say that right now, smaller sin tax, people buy it, we have a more likelihood of actually making a difference.
We've got time for maybe one more question. All right, here's a question over here.
I don't think I need a microphone.
You go, girl.
Very loud with a Texas accent. My question is, in a sense, for both teams. The problem or the harm that you've spoken about is obesity and its related health issues like diabetes and heart disease. But no one on either side has read any evidence indicating that the primary cause of the increase in obesity in our country is from the junk food rise. No one has cited a source that says that. And my question actually is, maybe you could answer this, but isn't it true that stress that is going up rampantly in America increases both cortisol and adrenaline in your body, which will not only make you gain weight, but it will affect the crystallization of the deposition of the various things that cause a heart attack in a person's body. So the stress, and isn't it also true that the rise in exogenous estrogens, not only from the birth control pill, but from plastics, is known to increase obesity? That is why in the United Kingdom, they banned BPH, okay, and it also causes autism. So if the problem you're trying to address isn't solely or primarily caused by the junk food, and there are these other risk factors, I mean, how much effort should you put into banning the junk food rather than addressing these other issues that affect public health in that way?
So the reason we've not been standing up reporting evidence is it's a difference in style of debate. It's not how we debate, because we can't show you the randomized controlled trials that go into doing that, and you can't evaluate that as an audience and make a meaningful assessment of it. I can just quote an article, say that it says what I think it says, and so in a public debate that doesn't work. The reality is Health Organization, the NHS, and every other major international body has identified a direct causative link between high carbohydrate content, high fat content, and diet, and various diet factors, and all of the concerns you have identified. The fact, hang on, I'm answering the question, I swear. So it is every aspect of it. Unprocessed, high fat, high carbohydrate foods will also do this. Processed foods refine that to a greater extent, causing greater harm. So junk food has a causative link. Now, the issue that you've identified is a difficulty in explaining how risk factors work. We cannot tell you that your single heart attack will be caused by one single burger. But we can say that if your burger was stored in BPA and that you then consume that burger every day, your risk increases. So for example, if 100 of you do this repeatedly every day over the course of your life, we can tell you that 22 of you will die of a heart-related disease. I can't tell you which of those it will be, but that's because of how risk factors interact with one another. That is not to say there isn't a causative link. It's to say I can't prove which causative link in you was the major problem, but I can tell you it puts you at increased risk. What you can't tell me is which risk is worse for you. So you can't tell me whether smoking or eating junk foods is more likely to be the thing that causes your cancer, because we can't know that. We just can never know. But I can statistically tell you both of those things increase your risk. And that's the problem with this debate and the question you ask. It's not, stylistically, it's our burden to identify these risks and explain them. The problem is an understanding of how risk factors interact with one another. And finally, plastics don't cause autism. That's an entirely separate question.
Sorry, I'm not a scientist, so I won't be able to do things as clearly and with such clarity as Neva's just done. But I'm going to stress from a very, very basic level, it's clear, obvious, that if you have junk food, you are going to be more obese. If you have it for a significant amount of time. Neva and I have been on this tour for about a week, and we've both put on about 5 pounds. Or no, 5 pounds. Well, far too much to admit, and that is scary because of the foods that we're having. Because on each stop, we've been told about significant food, just the amount of calories that are in certain food, the amount of products in certain food. I certainly agree. I recognise the question, and I agree with what Neve is saying. But to then say because there isn't necessarily a specific direct link, we should ignore it. We shouldn't be smoking. We shouldn't be having junk food. We certainly should be exercising more. These are all factors, and because there is a problem with junk food, I say we should be able to sort of at least qualify it and certainly ban significantly junk food.
The premise of the question regarding plastics also concedes this problem, because when we banned BPH plastics in the UK, we didn't know that it caused all forms of estrogen-related cancers. We just knew it increased the risk. So even there, what we've done is identify a relative risk increase that merited an action. And that's the exact same thing we say with junk food.
All right, thanks everyone for questions. Ladies and gentlemen, we're almost done with our deep fried debate, but we've got time set aside for both sides to give a summation speech. We start off with the government.
That's some of the most interesting questions I've been asked in a long time in a public debate. That was really fun. I'd like to thank everyone for their contributions and to our teammates and to our opposition for a really fantastic debate. You guys were absolutely excellent and I've really enjoyed myself, so thank you. I'm going to try and just clarify the questions of the debate and ask whether or not you feel, or whether or not we feel, and explain why we feel that we've explained the risks, the imminent crisis, and the justifications for taking this action, and why the negations case, which is that we should only use one of the models we've talked about, isn't sufficient. First off, though, I'm going to do some specific rebuttal, okay? So first and foremost, I've clarified in these questions already why I haven't gone into an incredibly detailed, complex mechanism about exactly which micronutrients I'm going to look to get rid of. It'll be lost on every single one of us, including me. I'm saying we need to outsource expert-led decisions to experts. I don't make the decisions about what goes into lead-based paints or what doesn't anymore, because I know nothing about paint. I do know, though, that removing lead from paint reduces problems with childhood cognition development, and therefore a bunch of expert engineers decided what they could use as a substitute. I'm saying we should do the same. I think that's a reasonable step, and I'm saying that's the model I would use. I would get experts to decide. But I think what I'm trying to also clarify is that there are some things that just have no place in a human mouth. And I think that a lot of those things end up in our mouths on a daily basis. And I'm willing to accept a sin tax for a certain proportion of sugar or carbohydrate or fat within foods. I'm also willing to revise these definitions as better evidence comes out. But on the basis of the evidence we have right now, no one, and especially not a child, should be eating nerds. They're hilarious, they're delicious, but they are terrible for you. They have absolutely no nutritional value whatsoever. And I think we all know we can distinguish between those two things. And while I'd be willing to sin tax heavily things that are tasty and not wholly bad, like M&Ms which contain at least peanuts, and peanuts at least have better nutrient contents, although still far too high fat and sugar, I'm willing to say probably you should pay through the nose for that, and that would be better than banning it altogether. But I think that that's still something we should be relatively willing and able to discuss. However, on to, in rebuttal, this black market thing. I love the idea of speakeasies for M&Ms. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I'd probably try and go to one. But I also don't think it really is that big of a problem, right? Firstly and foremost, that concedes that it would be more difficult to get this kind of horrible ingredients in your day-to-day food content, which does concede that you will get a reduction in the consumption of these goods, which does concede all of our health benefits, which does reduce all of the health costs associated for your government, which does concede that argument too. But also, even then, you're talking about restricting access in a way that I don't find that problematic. Secondly, as I already answered in the questioning, I have no intention of criminalizing the consumption of these goods. If people smuggle them in, I'm not going to make it profitable to do so. What I am going to do is send people to prison if they are smuggling them in. I think that's reasonable because they are breaking the law and smuggling is already illegal, and I would apply all the same legislation as there is for any form of other smuggling to that. Third and finally, in this principal question, they've already kind of conceded it when they say they want to do a sin tax. They've said that your freedom of choice is paramount, but you should be unable to make the choice fundamentally for financial reasons, which also concedes that it's not actually really fair the way we currently do this, or isn't really fair that we allow certain people to be able to access certain goods on the basis of wealth. They also then accuse us of creating poverty and food deserts. But under the current status quo, people are made unhealthier by being unable to afford healthy food, because salads do cost like 3 times as much as a pizza. There was a lunch deal that we got that was $6 for 2 pastas and a whole pizza. A whole pizza. I couldn't eat a quarter of one of the portions of pasta. It was absolutely terrifying. That was $6. The salad at the same place was $12. So we're effectively already taxing people for not being able to afford decent food. Why is that principally justified? That makes no sense at all. Finally, though, moving on to the actual summation of the principal questions. Why as a society should we do this? I think the question at this point is why as a society should we allow it? It makes no sense. And if you were to set out tomorrow to produce a chemical which brought about the same fundamental harms to a person's physiology as this does, we would ban it. It's only that it's something that we enjoy and partake in as a family all the time together to spread joy that we don't do that, because we see the immediate tangible joy that it brings us. But I am the joy police. I want you to get your joy in other places, other better places that won't take away your joy when you're older and can't do anything about it. That's why they talk about rights, but your 14th Amendment gives you the right to engage in equally in society. This isn't equality under the present sense, and we want you to affirm the motion.
Give me a second while I finish my nerds.
Definitely not the
So, as I close the speech and everybody else has also told you thank you, as I've already done once, I will continue to say thank you for staying, because there were many people that left and don't get to see the end of this debate. And thank y'all for showing up, because it's been weird just sitting here. But some things that we need to keep in mind when we're deciding on a vote for banning junk food. Realize that if you vote for the affirmative, you're banning junk food. You're not just advocating for a sin tax of some kind, you are also banning types of junk food, or foods, which apparently in Neve's last speech also now include pasta, which was $6 at the restaurant, and the salads were $12. In the world of the affirmative,
Salads will stay $12. Pasta's just gonna cost $30. The issue with that is that doesn't give more access to people who are impoverished and aren't able to get the healthy food as it is. It doesn't fix that. It messes up wealth equality. That's a whole other issue. But additionally, understand that Neve is probably one of the most educated on some of the health risks. She told you in her first speech, she can only tell you about 50% of what the ingredients on the bags are gonna do. If that's true, and she has that 50% knowledge, then tell me why she ate that donut burger. Because it's a choice. She could have said, I don't want to go there, or I would rather choose something different. But instead, she chose that donut burger because she wanted the experience of the fast food of Texas, because that's what we're known for. But two, she wanted to live, which means that risk was obviously worth it. Those are simple tasks of being able to choose that the negative Josiah and I are advocating for. At the end of this debate, it's going to come down to, do you want the government to control what you consume? Or do you want it to be your autonomy that chooses and the market that decides how much it is? Because in an ideal world, we would get to choose what we eat and how much it costs. It's just not going to happen. So ultimately, whenever y'all got to choose, or most of you did, if you wanted candy at the beginning of this round, you either chose you did want it, or you rejected it. We say that you should get that right to choose whether or not you can have it, or you don't. So enjoy your candy or don't. But at the same time, some of the arguments that go unaddressed in today's round, in specific, are things like, it crushes your individual autonomy at a young age. Now they talk about autonomy and like, oh, we have this public good idea that we need to make sure that we're taking care of people over you should get to choose what you want to do. But the bigger issue here is people that are 3 and 4, who are also people, even if they are children, start to learn how to choose what car they want to play with, what they want to go do, based off of first, them being able to choose what they put into their mouth or don't. Which means that you take away that ability for them to choose that, then they don't get to have their own right and individuality in the future. Second, we argue that we don't need another prohibition. If we do a ban and a type of syntax that makes little M&M packets $10, $15, which I ate the little M&M packet, it's not worth $10, $15. But people are gonna find their way around it to be able to pay for it, putting themselves into poverty, not fixing any of the issues, which means the affirmative doesn't end up solving any of the problems. Additionally, whenever we're looking at the world of the affirmative, there isn't any clear enforcement of this. And Josiah slightly brings this up, where Neve clarifies that she's not going to send people to jail for consuming it, it's whenever they smuggle it in. Well, if I'm a smuggler because I decide that I have a Twinkie cartel, I'm going to charge $5 per Twinkie because you can't get them anywhere else. Somebody catches me, I'm just going to go, I consume all those Twinkies. I don't remember where I got them from. Now nobody's going to jail. Nobody's getting in trouble, which means that their model of it decreasing availability or access goes down the drain. Which means that this just creates a bigger problem of people putting more sugar, more carbs into things like Twinkies. Or things that people still eat, because nobody really eats Twinkies anymore. But third and finally, the biggest argument that hasn't been addressed is the black market. It's not just this facade of, oh, yeah, we've had prohibition issues in the past, and speakeasies were used to sell drugs, but that won't happen. It will happen, because people still want their Lay's potato chips. People still want their French fries for cheap, because we are all cheap. And ultimately, that's kind of what you look at in today's debate round. We argue that you should have the ability to choose and think for yourself. Don't let the British tell us what we need to do again.
Hey, join me in thanking all of our debaters. Great job, everyone! Yeah, we're definitely taking the British to McDonald's after this. All right. Hey, UNT, this year we're hosting a homecoming that we're out of this